Hey everyone, today we want to share a fantastic cosmic web geonodes effect for Blender. It is useful for creating superstructures resembling galactic filaments that actually run super fast. You can download it for free from our Patreon. I gotta hand it to Brady for sharing this crazy fast optimized Plexus setup. It's probably the fastest one available indeed, and a major thanks to Arendelle for the always incredibly helpful Discord community for Geometry Nodes fans. Cool, let me break it down for you how this effect works. First there's a sphere, then it's turned to volume, then this volume is filled with points, and then the points are connected with lines based on distance. Then the new set of points are distributed along these lines in the second iteration. So it becomes renderable and can actually react to light as an object of sorts. Then this effect just repeats itself, and those points in turn get connected by another set of lines, kind of weaving this organic cobweb-like structure, which is again turned to points. So to make things a little more messy looking, some procedural noise is added then as displacement, ultimately creating that sort of iconic look, something that manages to be really organic while still giving off this massive megastructure feel. The secret sauce for this point-based effect, though, is using transparent materials with multiple light bounces. This beautifully emulates a volume scatter effect, kind of like how you'd imagine a volumetric interstellar medium looking. The resulting structure can be enhanced by adding multiple lights and things like fog, letting us dive into cosmic experimentation right in Blender. This kind of exploration is all part of our journey towards the Space VFX sequel, which is shaping up to be a truly epic thing. We'd love to have you follow along. Feel free to subscribe to follow our progress. Okay, let me start with the Cosmic Web Simple blend file that you can download for free from our Patreon by following the link below. After you open it in Blender, you will see this. I have the viewport overlay turned off, but you can bring it back if you wish. Okay, so this is our megastructure. Essentially, it's a geometry nodes setup. If you click this object, you will see the geometry nodes modifier added. This is the entire setup. So let me walk you through some key settings really quickly. All that you see is created from here, from GeoNodes. The first thing that we can tweak is the random points generation, with its density controlled over there. Actually, if you want to check what any node does, you can Ctrl-Shift-click it to attach a viewer node to it. So this node creates a sphere, that one converts it to volume, that one distributes points inside this volume, with their density controlled over there, and so on. When done previewing, just hit X to delete. So the first key setting here is density. That controls how many points we're creating to be connected then. That's the density of our cosmic web structure. The important thing to keep in mind is the number of points. For instance, we can check it in the spreadsheet. See, the number of points in this point cloud is about 1 million. If we lower the density, this number will naturally get lower, which is better for performance, and vice versa. See, even though Brady has optimized this effect incredibly well, it can still crash your Blender if you push it too hard without being careful. Okay, that was a bit of a warning, I guess, or just something important to keep in mind. Alright, we can turn the rendered mode on. Now, this effect works well in both Eevee and Cycles. At its core, it's point cloud. In Eevee, the points are rendered as these square shapes, if you zoom in really closely. In Cycles, they're perfect spheres. But anyway, this is point rendering one way or the other. Okay, moving on to the right here, we have the distance probe and the finding the close points block. This is really the heart of the effect. We won't go into the details of how it works, because, well, it just does. What we can tweak, though, is the distance cutoff. It's how close the points need to be in order to be connected. If you crank this value up, you'll start to see how these neuron-like connections are being grown. Higher values will eventually lead to everything connected to everything else, which creates a pretty interesting look. It will even look a bit more precise in Cycles. But again, we need to keep performance in mind, so it's generally best to keep this number fairly reasonable. I think 0.5 in this particular case looks pretty good, pretty well connected, and just pretty. Then moving on to other things that can be adjusted, a notable one is this displacement, this set position node that can be muted with the M key to remove any displacement if you wish. And the lines will then become perfectly straight, giving us a more classic Plexus effect. I think. Then we have this second layer of displacement here. We can also tweak the amplitude or the scale of the displacement for a slightly more chaotic look. Also the scale of the second one over there. Swing into the right, then we have the second iteration of the connecting the points effect with its own distance cutoff. So again, this controls how close the points need to be for connections to form. Lower values will make it look a bit disjointed, like separate pieces of the web floating in the void, you know. It's a balancing act. Trying to get as much connectivity as you want without tanking performance or messing up the look. Finally, we have the third layer of displacement. That's for adding the final touch of chaos, I think. I wanted to say a touch of evil. And it has its own scale multiplier as well. Apart from that, the point radius controls how big the rendered points will be. That could be a really noticeable effect on the visuals, needless to say. It's essentially how thick you want this cosmic tissue to appear. I wouldn't make it too thick though, maybe something like that. Alright, that covers the main geometry node settings. What's next? Well, this thing actually reacts to light, so don't hesitate to throw in multiple light sources and see the effect. And when it comes to the shader, this simple cosmic web file features a pretty basic points material, which you can check in the shader editor. It is a super simple mix of diffuse and transparent BSDFs, nothing too crazy. Download the file and see how it all works firsthand. That's my advice. Oh, on a side note, let's jump back to geometry nodes for a sec. Even though all that displacement can make it a bit heavy for animation, you might be wondering how to get that classic Plexus animation effect with the points floating around. So in addition to generating static random points, there's an alternative method just above it in its own little block. It's called generate random moving points. You just need to plug it in like this. And yeah, these nodes are what create the moving points. So if you scrub through the timeline now, you should see them move. A cool randomly evolving motion, which is probably a little off topic for our space theme. But hey, who knows? Maybe you'll find a good use for it. Here's the radius of the sphere that you can tweak. Doesn't influence the number of points though. Here's the number of points, or the density. And finally, here in blue is the animation speed. Now the performance for animation isn't exactly top-notch, mainly because we've added a lot of extra details for these space visuals, things like the displacements and point clouds, but even with all that, it's still surprisingly fast. So here's the classic Plexus animation effect, if you wish. On top of all this, we also have an advanced version of this cosmic web available for our supporters over on Patreon. That's for access to the Tier 2 Shrimp Lab. Huge thanks to all our amazing supporters, you guys rock. It's the same core idea and practically the same geometry node setup, but it's just bigger, better, thicker, more detailed, and it comes with a more advanced shader, which is probably the most important thing. Now, when I say advanced, don't picture some crazy spaghetti of nodes stretching across the universe. It's still pretty elegant, I'd say. But it's got some magic going on under the hood, and we should definitely check it out. Let's see how it's structured. I'll Control-Shift-click on the diffuse BSDF to preview just that. So this, alongside the translucent material, is the basis of that shader that mixed together allows this object to react to light. Or to multiple lights for that matter. Pretty cool. I'm going to disable overlays once again. Then this gets mixed with some emission to make certain parts of the object glow, which kind of makes a lot of sense if you think of it as a heated gas or something similar. But the real secret ingredient here is transparency. See that really high value? That's important. Cranking up the transparency, especially the values getting close to 1, gives it these volume-like qualities. That's what makes these points look like they actually have some density, if you know what I mean. Alright, so just be aware this slider is super sensitive. Okay, now watch this. We can do something really unorthodox with this value. The common wisdom is that 1 means maximum transparency, right? But actually we can go above that. Like set it to 2 or any value above 1 for that matter, which will make it emit extra light. This will make the bits where the interstellar medium is thick enough actually start glowing, actively emitting light. Crazy, right? And this value can be subtle too. So we can make only those rare clumps of matter get excited and start radiating. And then of course we can change its hue as well. The thing about using extreme transparency to simulate volume is that, let's check the render settings light paths, is that it starts using lots of transparent bounces. If we were to change that value to 0, the light rays wouldn't be able to pass through anything anymore, making it a solid, dark matter. And cranking up the transparency allowance in the light paths would make it behave progressively more like wispy bits of clouds, or, interstellar medium perhaps. And that leads to these colorful bits appearing in the thickest areas, because our transparency was slightly tinted red, remember? By the way, the more bounces you allow, the slower the render will be, so you'll want to find a sweet spot. Also, if you're aiming for a more vibrant, colorful result, feel free to experiment with multiple light sources. And finally, adjust these transparent bounce settings to a level that works well with your machine, if you want it to be usable. And if you want to give it a moodier vibe, there's also a fog collection that you can enable. It adds some scattering and absorption on top of all that. Alright, thanks for tuning in. You can snag this version or the free one from our Patreon page. We're excited to see what you come up with. Make sure to stick around for more behind the scenes looks and techniques as we continue our research for the Space VFX sequel. This upcoming course will be packed with even more in-depth tutorials and advanced workflows for creating space visuals.